Hello and welcome back to another episode of Planet Coaster, everyone. Today we are going to be finally working on the queue area around the Colosseum and the swing ride that is currently sitting in the middle. First things first, we're going to go ahead and lay out some pathing and then try to figure out how we want to work this queue through this large green space. Now, I'll be the first one to tell you that I'm not great when it comes to making queues in a theme park game. I find them, at least for me, kind of to be more of an abstract shape, or at least if we want to make an interesting queue, it tends to be a little bit more idealistic to make an abstract shape. I don't think well in those terms. So, you can see that I'm trying a whole lot of different variations until we finally settle on one. Kind of going back and forth in different ways, trying to change the angle of the path as much as possible, get some 90-degree turns and bends in there. We'll definitely try and make it at least look somewhat unique. That's the goal. Over here on the back side of what we finished on the last live stream, we're kind of going in and editing the back of this building a little bit. I mentioned that I wanted to have a wheelchair access ramp on the back side of this that would curve around and then go back inside the structure. I figured it would be a good space for it. We have a bit of a dead area back here, so just throwing out this large kind of ramp feature, one, it kind of makes the area look a little bit more interesting than it might otherwise would, right? Because we're adding a little bit of an extra jut to this building and kind of breaking it out from the flat surface of the wall. We're going to add in guardrails. These are kind of the standard kind of Alpine Odyssey kind of wheelchair access ramps that most of the park has. It's a standard kind of castle tile piece for the flooring, bricks for columns, smooth sandstone bumper barriers so that people can't just roll off the edge there. I'll probably end up putting full guardrails on it as well. This one's a little bit steeper and a little bit higher up than most, so I should probably add that in there. Really, it's kind of funny how you notice some things are missing, especially when you go back and rewatch what you've already built. So the queue, the decoration of the queue. This space has been on my mind for a long while, and it's never become quite clear how I wanted to tackle it. It's a tough space to work on because you are surrounded by so many tall structures. We have the villa kind of row homes back there. We have the Colosseum in front of us, and behind us the arch. So we can't really put anything tall back through here. So we're gonna go with kind of wood framed and market it out, kind of like market stalls. So as that progresses, hopefully that's gonna keep the heights relatively low, and so that people can still see over them and see some details of the Colosseum, so it can kind of lure people back into this corner. And also from across the way, you can still see the nice facade of these stucco buildings on the left and their roof line, and the archway on the main plaza. So, I don't know how successful that is, to be honest. It's kind of a hit and miss for me. I generally think the area looks good, but it also might be covering up too much compared to what people might want to see, especially around this side of the park. Now, when you're across the lake, you still have a wonderful view of the whole area. And really, what the Colosseum might be more useful for is not a weenie while you're already in the Roman area, but a weenie to be viewed from the Asian or water park area, so that there's something interesting across the whole lake. That might be a little bit more of a better function for it. We'll just have to kind of wait and see. Now, I think at the end of the stream, people wanted this roof tile to be changed because the standard tiling just didn't look quite right on this whole building, especially since we couldn't get the left and right sides of that to match. So we're just changing it all to wood, just so this roof line has a consistent feel through it. Adding these additional little winglets on there for some more shadow overhang on the roof line. To me, it's kind of really important to have shadows on roof lines so that they feel very separate from the building. Same thing with footers. You're really separating out the bottom of the building versus the top of the building, and then everything in between is kind of standardized, a little bit more flat, unless you have like kind of splits across levels where floors would be, or around windows. Those are tips and tricks to try and at least keep, even though these are plain buildings, more interesting. Up here, we get some little market stalls. Now, I don't know how I want to decorate these. We'll probably end up decorating the interior of them on stream at some point and see what they sell. Initially, I thought they were going to be just kind of standard market stalls, almost like a farmer's market kind of look to them. However, later on, after we kind of place some tables in this kind of brick plaza area, I think having them as street food vendors would be kind of interesting. One, we could sell scones here, and everyone likes a good scone. And two, I don't know if that's just kind of my influence of going to Japan or not, but like it just sounded really good. So it's something that we'll probably do in this area, and plus with the seating that we eventually add, it kind of makes sense. Canvas for some of these roof lines here, just keep it simple. However, the texture can be a little repetitive, so just going to throw in some red stripes. Seems like red and kind of a nice light sand color. It's going to be most of the color palette in this area, and that's just not really going to change, especially throughout the whole park on this section at least. So we get some wooden floorboards going in just to separate these structures from the ground a little bit more. Some concrete lines to separate the stalls from each other, and then we'll use this little kind of additional smaller piece of wooden flooring as shelving. I actually generally like to use this piece for this. It's kind of elsewhere in Alpine Odyssey as well. Again, we're not using DLCs or mods or really anything from the Steam Workshop to try and enhance and make some of these things more detailed than necessary. The Alpine Odyssey is going to be and remain a kind of vanilla base game experience to kind of just showcase really what you can do with the base game, and really showcase that you don't need all these DLCs to make a really good looking park. Really, you just need to put in some effort and some time, and you can make some really beautiful things with it. And that's, I think, what everyone enjoys about Planet Coaster the most is it's just the unlimited feeling of creative potential from a lot of these structures that you can throw together, especially since you can go gridless and put a lot of little parts anywhere you want, even build whole buildings out of gridless pieces, which is, I think, at the point that we are kind of at now with Alpine Odyssey. So that's kind of an interesting thing, how when Planet Coaster first came out, how everyone was using kind of grid pieces and making pretty similar buildings, especially since the tile sets were limited. And then as people got more time and practice and people started sharing building techniques, just everyone's skill set just jumped dramatically. So, where everyone was, say, 2 years ago, is totally different than where people are now. So that's just kind of a cool thing to see that growth go through. Like, even if you watch one of my old videos from like the early alpha days of Planet Coaster, it's definitely way different than what we're doing here. So. Right, so these stalls, wanted to have a little bit of a countertop to some of them just to match the kind of wraparound back kind of shelving section. We're also going to raise up some of the shelving, keep some height variation and play through there. Additional kind of little wooden details going along the side, adding some trim. I didn't want them to be overly detailed, however they are semi-permanent structures in my opinion. So once kind of street stalls or vendors kind of are there long enough, and want to stay there for multiple seasons, they kind of have to start grounding the structure a little bit more. So that's kind of what we're hopefully portraying through here. Gonna add the rest of the queue is going to be mostly hedge work and garden work. This is an easy way to add a bunch of detail to an area without really too much effort. It just takes some time to place all the shrubs and bushes. Two, it's also going to be helping to keep everything else low. So, greenery, relatively low, shrubs, bushes, the occasional kind of taller tree in them definitely look really good. You can also get some height variation within just the foliage itself, so you can get some play intermingling there. And you can also use either hedges or whatever fence you want to put along your queue line to kind of just tighten that up a little bit. With the pathing tool and everything, you might not like the final shape that it came out to be, and so this is a good way to kind of frame it, get it to be the look that you wanted, and just kind of move on from there. So that curve up top, that kind of semicircle kind of fills in a little bit more once you add in the greenery. It's really just kind of a time consuming thing right now, just because of how the gizmo tool is still completely broken. It's so broken that it makes these kind of what seems to be trivial details much slower, because whenever you copy something, it tends to want to go off angle. Now, we're going to go ahead and build a circular building. We haven't done one of these in a little while. Again, I get questions all the time on how to make these type of things, and so I might sound like I'm repeating myself here, but essentially, you want to build a good section of it that's easily copyable. Is that a word? I don't know. Something that you can easily copy and paste and rotate, and I'm on a single axis. So you can see I'm using this wooden post. It's a grid item, and it's going to just snap everything together as soon as I rotate it 90 degrees. You can rotate things less, but with grid items, you can only rotate them 90 degrees. And so it tends to be an easier thing to do, to think about the whole 90-degree turn when you're using grid items. If you're using gridless items, you can do smaller steps, but it's the same process. Just takes some practice to get used to. There's also some general rules that you want to follow, such as these columns. You can see I only placed 2 of them, not the third one, and that's because the one on the left is going to fill in that final gap once you copy it over. And so you kind of have to consider how everything gets moved around when you do the copy and paste function, and just kind of keep that in the back of your mind the whole time you're doing it. What's going to overlap? What's going to duplicate up and possibly look weird because it already had something there from the previous section that you copied? And do the seams line up well? Is there much clipping? The way you kind of get around these issues is to copy and paste it occasionally. Just check, add some details, copy and paste it, move it around, and then take a look and be like, okay, I need to move this over a little bit. It's clipping too much. And then keep going back and forth until you get the look that you're looking for, and then you're essentially done. I thought I wanted to add a lower foundation across here just to give it a little bit more of a bottom presence, but to me that it's just stopped looking like it belongs in the area to me, so we ended up kind of backing that off because I wanted these taller pillars to be a little bit more of the focus in the archways. It does have a wooden roof. Romans did know how to build perfect domes, out of concrete and stuff. It's just, sadly, some of the smallest pieces that we have in Planet Coaster are wood. So it's generally what we're going to use to do a lot of these smaller arches and stuff like that. Really, I probably would have preferred it to be a actual concrete rooftop, but at least it looks tiled with the wooden pieces. So, you win some, you lose some. It's a little bit about compromise when you get to this point. And that's just the way it is working out. Okay, Jasper, you're making a bunch of noise back there. Anyways, copy it all over, add our center column. We'll probably just move one of the edge columns inward. Make it go all the way through the roof line so it feels like the whole roof is structured onto this single point in the middle. Add a little bit of an extra brick on the top so that it just has a little bit more character from above, because again, from Planet Coaster standpoint, we generally see the park 99% of the time from above. A lot of interiors and undersides of things you can kind of leave a little messy because not many people are going to see them. And even if they do, they're kind of few and far between anyways, because you don't spend a lot of time critiquing those areas. So we're not going to, smooth out the interior of that kind of, I don't know, what does that call it? I want to call it a gazebo, but it's not a gazebo. I don't know, it's just a covering of some kind. Anyways, more greenery at work to be placed. I was originally going to follow the terrain or the path here, but it just left a weird shape. So we're just going to angle this out a little bit, chisel it, kind of make the path look like it's more fitting the garden rather than the garden following the path sometimes. That's a good way to at least get the detail in there. You'll also notice that the greenery is clipping through that path as close as possible. And we might have to put some barriers in there eventually to prevent people from stepping through some of them. But, it's just different to have a green kind of fence, as per se, through the queue line than just a wooden fence line sometimes. I know sometimes, I get a little bit critiqued on how unrealistic Alpine Odyssey is. Probably, if you go to any standard theme park, the queue lines are generally just rope tapes off in a giant structure of some kind to keep everyone cool, or at least out of the sun a lot. Sometimes, then again, they don't, and then everyone's really grumpy. But Alpine Odyssey, it's been around for what seems to be 196 years, so I think they are backed by some sort of billionaire, and they have plenty of money to burn anyways. Backside of the access ramp, just trying to put a door here. I don't want it to actually go into the interior of the building because we like to use our interiors for some more actual gameplay oriented stuff. So we're just adding a door here. Where it comes out doesn't really matter. This is, really a non-usable path anyways. You're not going to see any guests come through here. It just needs to be here in case someone starts asking questions. And it's just a nice little detail. You don't really need it to work 100%. It's definitely better if it does, but right now I think this is fine. We're going to try and get the path to wrap up to the main upper area. This might need to take a little bit more time with. There's a lot of complicated geometry through here to get all these angles, but also you can see that the path is too wide for the space. So now I need to think about how I want to change the stucco building, which is probably something else that we're going to do on live stream this week, to kind of fit this a little bit more. We might have to cut the lower half off, and angle it and smooth it, and then think of supports. Who knows? It's just going to be a little interesting. We're also going to be copying some furniture from the European section here. These small tables and kind of ironwork chairs makes me think of Italy a little bit as well. So I figured they would fit the area. It's probably not going to be really Roman themed or anything like that, or at least old Roman or old Greek, but that's fine. These type of things like benches, chairs, tables tend to be a modern addition anyways, and so you want your guests to look and feel comfortable in your parks. Anyways, that's it for today's episode of Speed Build section, I guess. We're going to go ahead and hop into real time. You guys can take a look at it. Give me your awesome feedback as always, and we'll end the episode there.